In London, Benjamin began right away to live in style and comfort. He bought new shoes, new wigs, new shirts, a new watch, 2 pairs of silver shoe and knee buckles, new candlesticks, new chinaware, and a new carriage. He did get carried away, didn't he? He had his sword blade repaired and ordered new spectacles because he'd left his best pair at home. He rented 4 large rooms in a house owned by Mrs. Stevenson, who treated him like a king. When his back itched, she gave him an ivory back scratcher. She warmed his shirts before he put them on. She even trained her cat not to sit in his favorite chair. Of course, she served only the foods that he liked best. Never beef, which upset him. As if this were not enough, Benjamin received a regular supply of American cornmeal, venison, cranberries, and bacon from his wife, Debbie. He sent Debbie presents in return, including a crimson satin coat and an apple core. With the exception of 2 years back in America, Benjamin lived in London for 18 years, from the time he was 51 until he was 69. Debbie, afraid to cross the ocean, died the year before he finally returned. She hardly saw him. Benjamin was in London when George III was crowned King of England. He was there in 1765 when England began laying down taxes and making trouble for America. He did his best to keep the two countries friendly, but over the years England became more and more stubborn. First one tax, then another. Sometimes England would repeal a tax, but it would never give up its right to tax America. Benjamin discovered that all his rules for arguing, which had worked so well in the past, were of no use against such stubbornness. He finally gave up arguing altogether one day in 1774 when he was called before the British government to explain his activities in behalf of America. For 2 hours, he stood before the government's Privy Council. He was shouted at, laughed at, insulted, and condemned. Franklin, white with rage, said not one word. He was being treated like an apprentice. Indeed, England was treating America as if it were a country of apprentices instead of a country of free men. And Franklin could stand it no longer. In the spring of 1775, he returned to America, only to find that America and England were already at war. The Battle of Lexington had been fought while he was at sea. Franklin was so mad, he told Americans if there wasn't enough gunpowder to go around, they should use bows and arrows against the English. He was so mad that he would have swum out in the ocean with electric bolts to shoot at the English, if he could have. But America had other uses for him. Right away, he was put in the Continental Congress and placed on 10 different committees. When the time came to write the Declaration of Independence, he was one of those who was asked to do it. As it turned out, Thomas Jefferson did the writing, but Franklin made the changes. The truths that Jefferson held to be sacred and undeniable became self-evident truths when Franklin had finished. But these jobs were small compared to the big one Congress had for him. Benjamin was still America's best arguer and America's most famous citizen. So, in the fall of 1776, he was sent to France to try to talk to the French into entering the war on America's side. George Washington would run the war in America, but Benjamin Franklin would run it in Europe, getting all the help and money from any country that he could. Benjamin was 70 years old now and found the ocean trip hard. The seas were rough, the weather was freezing, he had boils on his body, gout in his legs, and a skin disease on his head that bothered him so much that he wore a loose fur hat instead of his usual wig. When he arrived in France, he was rumpled, crumpled, and weak, not the stylish, famous-looking figure the French had expected. Of course, Benjamin planned to dress up as soon as he felt better. But to his surprise, he discovered the French liked him as he was, fur hat and all. Indeed, he was an immediate sensation, a plain man in the most fashionable country in the world. Within a month, the French had made them their hero. French ladies found him charming. They fussed over him and called him Papa. They hung his picture over their mantles and wore his picture in their rings. Frenchmen cleared the way for him when he appeared in the streets. So, Benjamin never did dress up. He never wore a wig or carried a sword the whole time he was in France, not even when he went to see the king. If being plain made him popular, Benjamin Franklin had the good sense to stay plain.